Snap. I press it into the center of the book and shove it deeper into the red coals. Hiss. Page 14 curls inward. The glossy paper melts. His face. The tailored tuxedo. His large hand resting heavily on my bare shoulder. If you look closely at that photograph, you can see my knuckles are white around my bouquet. It wasn't an embrace, it was a clamp. The flames eat his smile first. I am 84 years old. The firelight dances across the blue, raised veins on my hands. I don't look away. My eyes are dry. The heat feels good on my brittle skin. Beneath my thick wool sweater, resting right against my collarbone, is a weight, a tarnished silver key, heavy, unforgiving. It hangs from a frayed, blackened velvet ribbon. The velvet is rough now, rubbed bare. It cuts into the thin skin of my neck. It is hung there, hidden in the hollow of my chest, for exactly 42 years. I reach up with my left hand. I press my palm flat against my chest. I feel the cold, jagged teeth of the key through the wool fabric. He never knew about it. In half a century of sleeping in the exact same bed, he never felt it. He never touched me softly enough, never looked at me closely enough to notice a piece of silver resting over my heart. Crack. A glowing ember spits out of the fire. It lands on the brick hearth, glowing angry orange. I lift my hard-soled slipper. I step on it. I grind it into gray dust. The hospital monitor flatlined on Tuesday, 4:14 am. The night nurse rushed in 3 minutes later. But for those first 3 minutes, I didn't press the call button. I just stood up. I walked to the window. I watched a stray cat walk slowly across the frost-covered parking lot. I listened to the absolute silence in the room. Now there is a freshly dug grave with his name on it and a pile of ash in my living room. The metal is finally warming up. If my grieving children knew what this key opened, they would never look at the frail, helpless mother they think they know, ever again. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticks. Heavy brass pendulum, back and forth. It is 6:12 p.m. My shoulders hitch up toward my ears. My jaw locks. The muscles in my back pull tight like old piano strings. I am sitting in the floral armchair. My hands grip the armrests. The fabric is worn thin right where my thumbs press down. 6:14 p.m. For 52 years, 6:15 p.m. meant the crunch of gravel under heavy tires, the loud thud of the oak front door, the violent drop of his leather briefcase on the mahogany console table. It was the sound that meant the oxygen in the house was no longer mine to breathe. 6:15 p.m. silence. Just the ticking clock. No heavy boots striking the hardwood floor. No low, rumbling throat clearing that demanded a hot dinner on a ceramic plate within 30 seconds. My body does not understand the silence. It is braced for impact. It is waiting for the sharp remark about the water spots on the kitchen faucet, or the way the roast beef is sliced too thick. I stare at the front door. The deadbolt is thrown. The brass chain is locked. It takes exactly 12 minutes for my heart rate to slow down, for my shoulders to drop a single inch. I am a stray dog, flinching at a raised hand that is already buried 6 feet in the dirt. I stand up. My knees pop. I walk to the thermostat in the hallway. He kept it at 64 degrees, year-round, to save pennies on the heating bill, to keep me wearing 2 pairs of wool socks inside my own home. I reach out with a trembling, age-spotted finger. I push the plastic dial, up. The furnace kicks on with a deep rumble deep in the basement. Hot air blasts from the floor vents. It hits my freezing ankles. I stand directly over the iron grate. I close my eyes. I let the burning heat wash over my legs. My left hand drifts up to my collarbone again. My fingertips find the sharp edges of the silver key through the wool of my sweater. Tomorrow, my eldest daughter will come over. She will bring plastic Tupperware containers of bland soup. She will look around this large, quiet house, silently calculating its market value. She thinks I am a fragile, shattered widow, wandering these empty halls, lost without my captain. She has no idea that I have been practicing for this exact silence since she was 7 years old. The black wool of my collar bites into the back of my neck. It is the dress he picked out for me in 1998. He said the cut hid my waistline. I have kept it in a plastic garment bag ever since. A stiff black lace veil covers my face. Through the hexagonal mesh, the world is broken into tiny, dark pieces. I look through those pieces at my son David. He is 52 years old. His broad shoulders shake. He presses a damp handkerchief to his mouth. He is sobbing for a man who, until his dying day, thought David was allergic to strawberries. It was my younger brother who had the allergy. He never remembered. He never cared to ask twice. My daughter, Sarah, clings to her husband's arm. Black mascara bleeds into the fine lines around her eyes. She drops a single white rose onto the mahogany lid. Sickly sweet lilies suffocate the cold morning air. The smell coats my tongue. It tastes like rotting sugar. The priest stands at the head of the artificial grass mat. His voice drones over a microphone. A devoted patriarch. A protector. A man who built a fortress for his family. I do not blink. My eyes are dry sandpaper. If I forced a tear, the salt would sting. But there is no salt left. That well dried up on a Tuesday evening in 1974. The mourners form a line. One by one, they shuffle past me. The damp grass squelches under their black leather shoes. A soft hand squeezes my elbow. He was a Titan, Mary, a business partner whispers. You must feel so lost. I slowly lower my chin. I pat the back of his hand. I am a master of the theater. Beneath the heavy wool, my left hand stays perfectly still over my collarbone. The silver key absorbs my body heat. The velvet ribbon rubs a raw, red line against my throat. Thud. The gravedigger's shovel hits the polished wood. Thud. David flinches. Sarah buries her face in her hands. I stand incredibly straight. I listen to the dirt hit the brass handles. With every single pound of soil that buries him deeper in the earth, the silver key around my neck feels 1 ounce lighter. They think I am staring into the grave because I want to jump in after him. They don't know that my mind is already in the basement, counting the steps to the rusted iron door. The rag is damp with lemon oil. I rub the brass nameplate, 1992 Club Champion. The gold cup reflects my warped, wrinkled face. It distorts my nose. It hollows out my eyes. There are 14 trophies on this mahogany shelf. 14 towering, gleaming testaments to his swing, his grip, his weekends away while I scrubbed the grout with a toothbrush. I dropped the rag. I walked to the center of the living room, the oxblood leather recliner. There is a deep, dark indentation in the headrest, the exact shape of his skull. The leather is cracked and peeling right where his knuckles grip the armrests during the evening news. No one else was allowed in this chair, not the children, not the golden retriever we had in the 80s, not me. It was the throne, the heavy, immovable center of gravity. Every piece of furniture in this room is angled to face it. I turn in the slow circle. Above the fireplace, a framed oil portrait of him in his hunting gear. On the bookshelves, his leather-bound biographies of war generals, his wooden pipe rack, his crystal decanters. I look for myself. I scan the walls, the tables, the corners. There is no trace of a woman living in this house. No sewing basket, no watercolor paintings, no photographs of my own mother. In 1983, I bought a small ceramic bluebird at a flea market. I placed it on the kitchen windowsill. The next morning, I found it at the bottom of the aluminum trash can, buried under wet coffee grounds. Clutter, he had muttered from behind his newspaper. I never bought another one. I learned to shrink. I became the silent machinery that kept his museum running, the ghost that polished his brass. I walk back to the shelf. I pick up the lemon-scented rag. I walk over to the oxblood recliner. I drop the wet, oily cloth right onto the center of the leather seat. I don't pick it up. The chemical oil will seep into the pores. It will stain the hide permanently. A dark, ugly grease spot right where he used to sit. My left hand moves to my collarbone. I press the jagged teeth of the silver key into my skin until it stings. I am the curator of this museum. But my children don't realize. They are about to watch the curator burn the exhibits to the ground. I press down on middle C, thunk. The hammer strikes the rusted string inside the upright Yamaha. The sound is flat, sour. It dies instantly in the dusty air of the parlor. I haven't called a tuner since the winter of 1978. He had walked in, dropped his leather briefcase, and massaged his temples. Those damn scales are giving me a migraine, he had muttered. I closed the heavy wooden fallboard over the keys. I never lifted it again. My sheet music yellowed and curled inside the bench. I walked to the downstairs powder room. I opened the bottom drawer. I reach all the way to the back, behind a dusty box of Q-tips. My fingers find a small, scratched gold cylinder, Revlon. Cherries in the snow. I twist the bottom. A tiny nub of red wax pushes up. It is dried out, brittle and chalky. New Year's Eve, 1981. I painted it on carefully in the rearview mirror. He looked over from the steering wheel, his lip curled. You look like a cheap dime store girl. I took a dry paper napkin from the glove compartment. I wiped it off until my lips cracked and tasted of copper. That is the anatomy of silence. I sit in my chair at the far end of the 12-foot mahogany table. His empty chair sits opposite me, a mile away. For 4 decades, the only sound in this room at 7 Tower PM was the loud scraping of silver forks against china plates, the wet, rhythmic sound of him chewing his pot roast. I sat here and swallowed 1,000 words a day. An opinion on the evening news, a funny story from the butcher shop, a desperate, silent scream for him to just look at me for 3 consecutive seconds. I swallowed them whole. They formed a hard, calcified lump in my throat. They sank down into my chest. They settled right against my collarbone. I reach under my wool collar. I wrap my fingers around the tarnished silver key. The metal is warm from my skin, but its jagged teeth are still sharp. Tomorrow, my children will sit at this very table. They will loudly divide his assets over cups of black coffee. They don't know that the mute, invisible woman sitting quietly at the end of the table is about to lock them out of their own inheritance. The heavy, thick smell of rubbing alcohol is baked into the beige wallpaper. It coats the inside of my nostrils. It never washes off my hands. Whir! Click! Hiss! The green oxygen machine in the corner breathes for him. A plastic mask strapped tight across his sunken cheeks. His jaw hangs open. The skin is gray, thin as parchment paper, stretched tight over his sharp cheekbones. This is the man who spent 50 years sucking the air out of every room he entered. Now he buys it by the canister. It is 2:15 p.m. Time for the crushed pills mixed with applesauce. I pick up the small plastic cup. I hold the long plastic spoon. His eyes snap open, roamy, yellowed, filled with the same furious entitlement as always. He tries to bark a command, but only a wet, gargling rattle escapes his throat. The Emperor is trapped in a failing meat suit. I scoop up a small glob of the pale yellow mush. I step closer to the bed. I lean over him. He opens his mouth wide, expecting me to push the spoon in, to serve him as I always have. I stop the spoon, 2 inches from his lips. I look down at him. My face is completely blank. The muscles in my jaw are relaxed. His eyes widen. Confusion. Then, a flash of the old, familiar rage. He tries to lurch forward, but the straps hold him down. I hold the spoon there, perfectly still. 1 second, 2 seconds. 3. I watch the realization hit him, the stark terror dawning in those yellow eyes. For the very first time in his life, he is entirely at my mercy. The tiny woman he spent decades whittling down to nothing is holding his sustenance, his comfort, just out of reach. I am the warden now. I lower the spoon slowly and slide the applesauce into his mouth. He swallows greedily, his eyes darting back to my blank face. My left hand moves up to my collarbone. I press the tarnished silver key against my chest, right over my steady heartbeat. The velvet ribbon feels like a medal of honor today. He will die soon, and my children will descend on this house, weeping for their strong, invincible father. They don't know that the invincible father died months ago, and the frail, terrified creature I spoon-fed is about to leave them with nothing but dust. The smell of burnt coffee and cheap, sweet pastries from a plastic tray fills the kitchen. It is the Thursday after the funeral. My son David stands by the granite island. He points a manicured finger at the ceiling molding. Mom, this place is too much house for you now. The roof alone is a money pit. Sarah sits at the table. She has a yellow legal pad in front of her. A silver pen clicks against her teeth. We found a lovely assisted living community down past Elm Street. They have a knitting circle on Tuesdays. They speak over my head. Like I am an ancient deaf dog napping in the corner, I sip my tea It is tepid. The chamomile tastes like wet cardboard. They are circling the carcass of this house. David's eyes dart toward the heavy oak cabinets in the dining room. He is thinking about the antique sterling silver flatware. Sarah's pen hovers over the legal pad. She is mentally appraising the Persian rugs, the grandfather clock, the oxblood leather recliner. They assume the large, heavy steel safe in the basement is filled with the spoils of his hard work, the stock certificates, the bearer bonds. I'll help you pack up his clothes this weekend, Mom, Sarah adds, not looking up from her list. We can donate the suits. They have already buried me in the same hole. They just forgot to throw the dirt over my face. I set my teacup down on the saucer. The porcelain clinks softly. I am not moving. My voice is a dry rasp, like dead leaves scraping across concrete. The kitchen goes dead silent. David slowly lowers his phone. Sarah's pen freezes in midair. They stare at me as if the teapot itself had suddenly spoken. I do not blink. I look from my son to my daughter. The two strangers I birthed into this house. The two people who learned perfectly from their father how to look right through me. My left hand rises slowly, deliberately to my collarbone. I slip one finger under the collar of my sweater. I touch the cold, tarnished silver key. The heavy iron door to the basement safe requires a combination. They know the combination, but they don't know that inside that safe, behind the stacks of useless paperwork, is a small, battered metal strongbox. Crack. The thick gold foil tears. The cork squeaks violently against the glass neck. The Macallan 25, bought in 1999, reserved strictly for men in tailored suits, golf partners, bank managers, important guests. I lift the heavy Waterford crystal tumbler. I pour 2 fingers. The liquid is dark, rich amber. I walk to his antique mahogany desk. I set the glass down. No leather coaster. The ice begins to sweat in the warm room. A wet ring of condensation forms directly on the polished, century-old wood, a slow, permanent white stain. The digital thermostat in the hallway glows neon green in the dark. 7:2. I stand in the center of his study. I am wearing a thin, white cotton nightgown. My bare feet press into the intricate wool of the Persian rug. My toes are warm. I pick up the crystal glass. I throw my head back. I do not sip. I swallow. Fire. It scorches the back of my throat. It coats the lining of my stomach in hot pitch. I cough a harsh, dry hack. The fumes burn my nasal passages. My eyes water. I slam the heavy glass back onto the desk. Clack. I close my eyes. I part my cracked lips. I pull air in, deep, past my throat, down into the very bottom of my lungs. My rib cage expands outward. The stiff cartilage in my sternum gives a quiet, sharp pop, a full breath. The first full, unrestrained breath in half a century. For 50 years, I took shallow, silent sips of oxygen. I kept my shoulders hunched. I made my physical form as small as possible, so his booming voice, his anger, and his ego could fill every corner of this architecture. Now, the air in this room is thick, and it belongs entirely to me. My left hand moves up to my chest. I pull the frayed velvet ribbon out from under the cotton collar. I let the tarnished silver key rest flat against my bare collarbone. The expensive scotch burns in my veins. The heat travels all the way down to my cold fingertips. The house is finally perfectly still. But tomorrow, when the sun comes up, I am going to tear his legacy to pieces, re-it. The harsh shriek of the packing tape gun echoes off the cedar walls of the walk-in closet. I reach up, I pull a charcoal gray Brooks Brothers suit off its thick wooden hanger. The wool is heavy. It smells of dry, cleaning chemicals and stale cigar smoke. Sarah said she would call the charity truck on Monday to dress the needy, to preserve his legacy of giving. I drop the suit onto the hardwood floor. I press the heel of my hard-soled slipper directly into the label. I twist my foot. I snap open a heavy-duty, black contractor garbage bag. The thick plastic crackles violently in the quiet room. I shove the suit into the dark plastic, then another, then the silk ties. $200 apiece. I throw them in by the handful. They coil at the bottom of the bag like dead, colorful snakes. 3 bags, filled to the brim, dragged out the back door, down the concrete driveway, and left by the curb. The municipal garbage truck comes at 500 am. I walk back inside. I open the narrow, creaking door to the attic. The air up here is thin, stale, hot. In the far corner, buried under a tarp, is a cedar chest. I lift the heavy lid. The brass hinges whine. Underneath a layer of yellowed tissue paper lies the 1964 wedding album. White leather. Embossed gold lettering, it weighs nearly 10 pounds. The joints in my arthritic fingers grind together as I lift it. I carry it down 2 long flights of stairs. My breathing is shallow but steady. I walk into the living room. I kneel on the cold brick hearth. I stack 3 dry oak logs onto the iron grate. I pull a long wooden match from the brass box on the mantel. Scratch. The sulfur head flares. The harsh, bitter smell burns the inside of my nostrils. I touch the flame to a crumpled piece of newspaper. It catches instantly. Orange tongues lick the dry wood. I lift the heavy album. I heave it directly into the center of the fire. The heat hits my face. It bakes the dry, wrinkled skin on my cheeks. My left hand moves to my chest. I hook my finger under the frayed velvet ribbon. I pull the tarnished silver key completely out from beneath my sweater. I let it dangle in the open air. The metal catches the furious, flickering orange light of the flames. It glows. The past is turning to white ash right in front of me. But my children's future, their entire inheritance, is waiting for me at the bottom of the basement stairs. I hook 2 fingers behind my neck. I grip the frayed, blackened velvet ribbon. Snap. The old, rotted thread breaks. It falls to the floor. My collarbone feels suddenly, shockingly bare. I turn my back to the fireplace. The white leather album is gone. Only glowing, pulsing red embers remain. I walk to the basement door. I grip the faceted glass knob. It is cold. 12 wooden stairs. My bare feet make no sound. The air down here is heavy. It smells of damp earth, concrete, and decades of stagnant darkness. At the far end of the room, bolted deep into the cinder block foundation, is the towering steel safe. David and Sarah know the combination. I spin the heavy brass dial. Click, click, clack. 321458. I grab the thick iron lever. I push down. The internal deadbolts slide back with a heavy metallic groan. I pull the massive door open. Inside, stacked on the metal shelves, is the illusion of his empire. Thick, leather-bound portfolios, empty velvet jewelry boxes, binders filled with obsolete stock certificates from companies that went bankrupt in 1989. I reach past them. I slide my hand all the way to the back, underneath a false steel plate. My fingers graze cold iron. I pull it forward, a small, battered, rusted strongbox. I set it gently onto the concrete floor. I kneel down. My arthritic knees pop loudly in the dead silence of the basement. I slide the tarnished silver key into the rusted lock. It slides in perfectly. Clack. I lift the heavy iron lid. The hinges shriek. Inside, there is no gold. There are no cash reserves. There is only a single, crisp, white folder. I open it. On the left, a wire transfer receipt, dated yesterday morning at 9:02 am. The exact balance of every joint savings account, every liquidated investment portfolio, and his entire life insurance payout. $4 million. On the right, an irrevocable trust document, stamped in heavy blue ink by the county clerk. The beneficiary of the entire sum, and the sole inheritor of the estate once I vacate it, is a no-kill feline rescue facility 3 states away. 42 years ago, I secretly rented a post office box. 42 years ago, I began siphoning his wealth, $50 at a time, into an offshore account he could never trace. I bought the strongbox, locked the documents inside, and hung the key around my neck. Tomorrow morning, my children will sit at the mahogany dining table. They will demand the safe combination. They will pour their black coffee and divide a kingdom that ceased to exist 4 decades ago. And I will slide this empty, rusted box across the table. Listen to me very carefully. If your hair is silver, if your bones ache when it rains, do not buy your children's love with your retirement money. Stop paying their mortgages. Stop funding their failed businesses. Stop letting them use your grandchildren as emotional hostages to extort your bank account. They do not love you. They love your savings account. They love the combination to your safe. Change the locks. Tear up the will, protect your last dime. Total estrangement is terrifying. But the cold, brutal liberation of walking away is the only warmth you will ever truly need.